Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This will be the continuation of Little Acts of Kindness. This particular section plays a lot into the trigger warnings for this fic, so if you have any concerns, please reference those. If you feel the need to skip this chapter for any reason, this will be Part 22, Chapter 22, entitled, Why Hello There, Trauma. Izuku, needing to go to the bathroom, started to walk away from the recreational activities. The activities would be going on for another hour or so to give the kids who failed a chance to show off to the watching heroes and other visitors. He walked into the hallways, and after a few minutes, he found the bathroom. Quickly, he did his business and walked back out. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and Izuku felt a feeling of dread wash over him. Stomach twisting, he nervously started walking a bit quicker, unsure why he felt scared. He was safe now, wasn't he? This wasn't like back at Aldera where that teacher had been. Then from around a corner in front of him, a familiar, tall, lanky figure appeared. With shoulder-length blonde hair and yellow snake-like eyes, he appeared. The man who featured in his nightmares. The one who made his last year of middle school hell. "Finally! I've been looking all over for you, Midoriya," the English teacher said, stepping forward step by step. Izuku stumbled backwards, eyes wide in horror. "I should have just taken you before you started attending this stupid school. I should have realized that the heroes would figure it out. Now I have them following me." The man grinned, forked tongue flickering out. "Of course, if they are going to get to me, I'm going to make sure they won't be able to save you." He felt like he was going to be sick. He needed to get away, to flee, but his body didn't seem to be responding to him, and he was locked into place. Scream. He had to scream. If he could get some sort of shout out, then someone would help him. But his throat was locked up and no sound would come out. Nashi-sensei chuckled as he stepped closer. "Look at you. Still the same pathetic self. You can't even fight me, can you? And you want to be a hero? How can a gutless weakling like you be a hero, and you can't even talk?" Shakily, he managed to move back a few more steps, legs feeling like lead with each step he took. His vision blurred, and he could barely see. Such a crybaby. Nashi's tongue flickered out again. But really, your obvious fear just makes this all the more enjoyable. Izuku froze as a hand gripped his chin, and he was forced to stare at Nashi's face. "But you want to know what makes this better? This isn't to raise your grade. This is just because I want to see you suffer," Nashi hissed, before his cold lips were pressed against him, and Izuku cried silently, unable to move or do anything as Nashi forced his tongue into Izuku's mouth. Hizashi hummed lightly after turning the mic off. "Hey, Sho, can you cover for me for a little bit?" Shota sighed. "Do I have to?" "Well, I may have forgotten to use the loo," Hizashi said, laughing a bit as he rubbed the back of his neck, giving a bit of breath as his speakers had been sitting on his neck for a while. "Be quick. I'd rather not be announcing for long," Shota grumbled, glaring at the mic. "Thanks, Sho," Hizashi said as he got up and exited out of the room. Making his way through the halls, he found that the closer bathroom was out of order, with a note with a scrawled sorry in Cementoss's handwriting. With a sigh, he made his way through the halls to one of the more public restrooms. He turned the corner, his eyes widened in horror, as he saw a blonde-haired figure standing above Midoriya, mouth pressed against the boy's, and one of his hands down Midoriya's pants. He ran forward, shoving the guy off of Midoriya, and he saw red. His training took over as he quickly grabbed the stunned figure and bound his hands up. Okay, so he may have thrown the guy against the walls and floor a few times, but he was just making sure the guy was properly stunned. He turned to Midoriya, who was standing crying, but making no sound. "Little listener?" he questioned, and the boy flinched away. He felt that spark of rage grow. How dare that scum assault Midoriya? Hizashi lifted his shades up, looking at the boy. "You're safe now. I'm here. I won't let that trash touch you any more." Midoriya stared at him before the boy suddenly rushed forward, hugging him and burying his face into Hizashi's clothes. Aizawa-sensei." The boy's muffled voice was barely heard. "I'll take you to him," Hizashi promised. He pulled out his phone and texted Nezu. "Pedophile caught, bound in halls." "Which hall?" "Hall S34, close to the bathrooms." There was a moment in which there was no response, and then the phone buzzed. "He will be dealt with. Harshly." Hizashi grinned sharply. That trash deserved to have Nezu sicked on him. Hizashi led the little listener through the halls and soon made it back to the commentator's booth. He let the little listener in and Shota turned. As soon as he saw them, he muted the mics. "Midoriya?" As soon as the kid heard Shota's voice, he rushed from Hizashi to Shota. Hugging him and crying but not saying anything, Shota looked up, eyes wide, even as he wrapped his casted arms around the boy. "What happened?" he asked. Seeing how the little listener just shook even more, Hizashi spoke up, trying to keep his voice even, so as not to scare Midoriya. He was being assaulted by Nashi Doi. Shota's hug tightened around the kid a bit, even as his eyes narrowed into mere slits. "I tied him up and messaged Nezu." "He's taken care of, then?" "Yep, Nezu won't let him off the hook." It was at this point that Midoriya started to stop crying. Shota looked down at the kid, eyes softening. "You're going to be all right now, Midoriya." Midoriya just sniffled, hands reaching up to rub at his eyes, trying to wipe the tears away. "Go on out, Shota. I'll take care of announcing," Hizashi murmured. He still had to go to the bathroom, but he could hold it for a bit longer. Midoriya was more important. Shota nodded and carefully stood up and led Midoriya out of the room. Shota led Midoriya to the teacher's lounge. The boy seemed withdrawn, not crying nor protesting. Besides for the occasional sniffle, the boy was quiet. He sat the boy down on the couch and sat on a nearby chair. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked gently. He was a hero trained for all sorts of situations, not dealing with the aftermath of a sexual assault. Usually he didn't interact with them further than handing them off to the doctor. Which, he should probably bring Midoriya to Recovery Girl. He and Hizashi had suspected before, but it seemed now they had proof that the assault had happened. Was happening. Midoriya shook his head. "Do you want anything?" Still, Rocklock and Miss Joke were supposed to be keeping an eye on him, so how was it that he was able to hurt Midoriya? "Jelly packet," Midoriya whispered out hesitantly, eyes trained on the ground. Shota nodded and went to the fridge and pulled out one of his jelly packets he kept stored and handed it over to the kid. Midoriya sipped a small bit of it. "Do you want to continue in the sports festival, or would you rather be pulled out?" The kid took another sip, not responding for several moments. Thinking about it, most likely. Shota waited patiently for the answer. "I don't know." "That's fine. You still have time to decide," Shota stated. It was silent for another minute or so before Midoriya's voice whispered out. Am I weak?" "No," Shota replied, because Midoriya wasn't. "You are my student, Midoriya. You have potential to become one of the best heroes. Whatever he told you isn't true." Midoriya's eyes started watering, and Shota idly wondered how a kid could cry so much. "Midoriya, look at me, please." He waited as the kid slowly lifted his face up and looked him in the eyes. "You will be a strong hero. You will save people. Whoever told you otherwise is wrong." Midoriya's eyes were wide as the kid stared at him. Then seconds later, a flood of tears seemed to be coming out as the kid sobbed. Another 5 minutes passed before the kid stopped crying so much, but now seemed to be hiccuping a bit. Wordlessly, Shota got up and grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, handing it to the kid who drank it down. "Can I hug you?" Midoriya whispered hesitantly. Shota sat down next to the kid instead, of the chair across from him, and let the kid curl up into his side. The door opened and Shuzenji walked in. "Nezu texted me to come here, gave me a general idea of what happened," she said. She came over and started asking questions, which Midoriya reluctantly answered, though he kept his face buried into Shota's side, except when she needed to look into his mouth. Still, while the questions were blunt, it alleviated some of their worries for STDs. Apparently Nashi had never gone further than forcing Midoriya to give him blowjobs. Midoriya had whispered that Nashi had said he was planning to go all the way this time, before killing him. Shota was relieved Hizashi had found Midoriya when he did, before it could get any further than kissing and the scumbag touching Midoriya. Shuzenji gave Izuku a clean bill of health, for now, but that she would have to do a further few checks, to be sure. She left, giving him a look that conveyed that he better be careful. "Do you want to know how I met Hizashi?" Shota started. Midoriya's head tilted up, green eyes peeking through his hair at him with a quizzical expression. "As you know, the entrance exam consists of giant robots, and my quirk isn't useful against them. Well, I did get into general studies, and I knew that my chance for being a hero would be the sports festival. I made it to the finals, and met my opponent for the first time. Hizashi." Shota chuckled. "I didn't have the best first impression of him. He was loud and outgoing, two things I'm not. Well, I erased his quirk, and beat him, as he didn't have the best hand-to-hand. Having won the sports festival, I was immediately placed in heroics, with the teacher removing a kid that was forced to become a hero by their parents. Anyways, much to my annoyance, Hizashi was in the same class and dragged me to sit with him. At lunch, he kept dragging me along, and I met Nomuri, who was a year older, despite my initial thoughts on Izashi. I still found him becoming a good friend, and eventually thought of him as more than a friend. Midoriya remained quiet. A couple more minutes passed, and Shota glanced at the clock, noting there was about 10 minutes left before the finals were going to start. Midoriya started. Nashi-sensei would force me to kiss him, or to do things to raise my grade. He wouldn't accept the normal gifts. He wanted me to have sex with him to get my grades higher. But he assigned a point value to each action. I only did the low point actions, enough to barely pass. You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore, Shota promised, fuming at how a supposed teacher abused Midoriya. Of course, it seemed that almost all the school had been in on it. Why? Why would they hurt a child? Was it seriously just because he was quirkless? Shota couldn't comprehend how an entire school could get behind hurting a kid. Only one teacher there had been sympathetic, but hadn't acted in fear of losing her job. Midoriya spoke that the normal gifts didn't work. It seemed that the kid was used to having to give things to the teachers to keep his grades raised. Shota let out a slow breath. Midoriya trusted him, but he didn't know how he could help the kid. Midoriya was already in quirk counseling with Hound Dog, and doing light counseling, and it seemed All Might wasn't doing anything about that. Perhaps they should up it to 2 meetings a week. I want to participate in the finals. Are you sure? Shota quietly asked. Midoriya nodded, looking up at him. I want to prove that I'm worthy of being a hero. The kid looked down as a barely audible whisper was heard. I want to make you proud of me. I'm already proud of you, kiddo, Shota said honestly. Midoriya had stepped into the danger at USJ to save his classmates, to protect All Might, even though most would think that the #1 hero would be able to protect himself. Even in the battle trials, despite the fact that Midoriya and Bakugo had some sort of history, the kid let Bakugo attack him so Uraraka would have a better chance at succeeding. Still, Midoriya had something he wanted to prove, and Shota wasn't going to stop the kid if he was determined. So he carefully sat up. Are you ready to return now? Or would you rather stay here up until your match? Midoriya bit his lip, but then said, I'm ready to return. Shota nodded and helped the kid up, wanting to grab a paper towel and wipe the kid's face gently to remove tear tracks and help the kid look more presentable. With his cast, though, he was unable to do such. Instead, he just nudged the kid to the paper towels and watched as Midoriya scrubbed at his own face. Then he walked the kid towards the stands. You can do it, kiddo, Shota said, carefully giving the kid a pat on the head with his cast and watching as Midoriya entered into the stands, where the rest of his classmates except Ojiro, Sero, and Yaoyorozu were sitting. Once Midoriya was seated, Shota turned and left, heading towards the commentator booth. As soon as he entered, Hizashi turned the mic off. Finally! I really gotta go. I didn't have a chance to go earlier. Take over for me. Bye. Before rushing out of the room. Shota stared blankly for a moment before face-palming at his husband's antics. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 22 of Little Acts of Kindness. Chapter 23 will be up next, which will continue on the sports festival. This was a bit of a rough chapter, but I think the author does a really nice job showing Dad Mike and Dad Zawa coming to the rescue in this one. Let me know your all's thoughts and reactions, and as always, thank you so much for listening.